Short Story 106. The Case of the Missing Muffins. Mrs. Higgins, a kind old lady with a fondness for all things baked, woke up to her usual routine, a cup of tea and a freshly baked blueberry muffin. But today, something was wrong. Her kitchen, normally filled with the sweet aroma of baking, was eerily silent. The oven, usually glowing warm, was cold. And worst of all, her plate, where a fluffy muffin should have been, was empty. "Oh dear," she exclaimed, "someone has stolen my muffin." Mrs. Higgins, despite her age, was no stranger to trouble. She lived alone in a small village known for its peaceful nature, but even the most peaceful places have their mysteries. So she grabbed her trusty magnifying glass, a gift from her detective nephew, and set out to investigate. Her first stop was Mrs. Peabody, her neighbour with a notorious sweet tooth. "Did you see anyone strange near my house this morning, Mrs. Peabody?" she inquired, holding up the magnifying glass. Mrs. Peabody, covered in flour from her own baking session, shook her head. "Not a soul, Mrs. Higgins, though I did hear a strange noise around sunrise, like someone scurrying." "Scurrying?" Mrs. Higgins repeated, intrigued. Could it be a mischievous animal, perhaps tempted by the muffin's aroma? But then she noticed something glinting on Mrs. Peabody's apron, a single glistening blueberry. "Mrs. Peabody," she said gently, "do you mind explaining this?" Mrs. Peabody blushed. "Well, you see, Mrs. Higgins, I haven't had any blueberries for my pie, and yours smelled so delicious." Realizing the culprit was more human than animal, Mrs. Higgins decided on a different approach. "Mrs. Peabody, I understand your craving, but stealing is not right. How about we make a deal? You help me find the true thief, and I'll bake you a whole batch of blueberry muffins." Temptation won, and Mrs. Peabody became Mrs. Higgins's partner in crime solving. Together they followed the trail of flour-dusted footprints leading away from her house. The footprints ended at the village bakery, owned by Mr. Grumbles, a grumpy man, known for his subpar pastries. Peeking through the window, they saw Mr. Grumbles struggling with a large bag of flour, spilling blueberry-stained crumbs all over the floor. "Aha!" Mrs. Higgins whispered. "He must have stolen the flour to make his own muffins, knowing yours were irresistible." Armed with Mrs. Peabody's blueberry-stained apron as evidence, they confronted Mr. Grumbles. He initially denied everything, but seeing the incriminating stains, his confession tumbled out like overproofed dough. "I saw your window open, Mrs. Higgins," he mumbled, "and the smell, it was too much for me. But I promise I'll pay you back for the flour and make a public apology." In the end, justice was served, with Mr. Grumbles paying Mrs. Higgins for the stolen flour and apologizing to the entire village. As for the culprit, Mrs. Peabody received her reward, a basket overflowing with warm, delicious blueberry muffins. The village, once again peaceful and sweet-smelling, learned a valuable lesson. Even the smallest crimes can be solved with a bit of wit, teamwork, and perhaps a shared love for baked goods. And Mrs. Higgins? Well, she enjoyed the case-solving adventure, the delicious reward, and most importantly, the knowledge that even in a peaceful village, there's always a story waiting to be unravelled. Vocabulary notes. Level 1. Basic. Routine. Regular daily activities. Eerily. Strangely and unpleasantly quiet. Magnifying glass. A tool to make things look bigger. Intrigued. Curious and interested. Temptation. A strong desire to do something even if it's wrong. Deal. An agreement between two people. Crumb. A small piece of something like bread or cake. Mumbled, spoke quietly and unclearly. Overproofed, dough that has risen too much and becomes sticky. Overflowing, filled to the top and spilling out. Wit, intelligence and cleverness. Teamwork, working together to achieve a goal. Level 2, intermediate. Fondness, a strong liking for something. Notorious, well known for something bad. Scurrying, moving quickly and quietly on small feet. Glistening, shining brightly. Blush, become red in the face, often from embarrassment. Approach, way of dealing with something. Glinting, shining brightly and intermittently. Incriminating, evidence that makes someone look guilty. Tumbled out, came out quickly and uncontrollably. Subpar, not very good. Confront, approach someone directly in a challenging way. Mumbled, spoke quietly and unclearly. Incriminating, evidence that makes someone look guilty. Overflowing, filled to the top and spilling out. Reward, something given to someone as a way of saying thank you. Unravelled, solved or explained. Level 3, advanced. Nephew, the son of your brother or sister. Investigation, the process of trying to find out what happened. Aroma, a pleasant smell. Scrumptious, delicious and tempting. Temptation, a strong desire to do something even if it's wrong. Confession, admitting to doing something wrong. Mumbled, spoke quietly and unclearly. Apology, a statement saying that you are sorry for something you did. Overflowing, filled to the top and spilling out. Wit, intelligence and cleverness. Unravelled, solved or explained. Bonus. Blueberry, a small blue fruit. Muffin, a small round cake baked in a cup. Pie, a sweet dish with a pastry crust filled with fruit or other ingredients. Apron, a piece of clothing worn over the front of your body to protect it from dirt. Bakery, a shop that sells bread and other baked goods. Crumb, a small piece of something like bread or cake. Dough, a mixture of flour, water and other ingredients used to make bread, muffins, etc. Village, a small community of people living close together. Story written by Google Bard AI. Image created by Adobe Firefly AI. Hello, this is Steve. If you enjoyed the story, please would you click on the like icon and take the time to leave a meaningful comment. If you want to know when the next story has been uploaded, please click on the notify bell icon to be notified. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and tell your English learning friends so they can benefit too. Thank you.